Hello, and welcome to the 193rd episode of Gaming Talk. On this episode, I'm going to be discussing and giving my thoughts on Dark Souls 3. Let's get into it. I am very glad to have finally finished this trilogy of games, but I feel like those in the Souls-like fandom are going to be disappointed when I say that my overall very basic take on Dark Souls 3 is that it just feels like more of the same that I got in the first two games. Nothing drastically changed. But this basically means that everything I like and dislike from Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 pretty much transfers to Dark Souls 3. Yes, Dark Souls 3 looks good graphically. It's got really well made and well implemented sound effects. It is possible that DS3 has the best magic system, but I never really interacted with that, so I have no idea if that's the case or not. But yeah, that's the stuff that I liked that carry over. As for the stuff that I dislike that carries over, the first being that Dark Souls 3 could heavily benefit from having some kind of map that the player could access. Yes, like in the previous two games, there are areas of Dark Souls 3 that have extremely confusing level design, which I actually found to be more prevalent in both of the DLCs. The level of design in those DLCs was much more convoluted than base Dark Souls 3 level design is, and I'm not really sure, I'm not a fan of it. I don't like getting lost in games. I'm gonna say that had I not been using a walkthrough of the game as I was playing it, I probably would not have been able to finish the game, as I would have just gotten frustrated and given up. Yes, I had more of an issue with getting lost than the typical Souls-like stuff of combat and boss fights, as to me that's just something to be expected in a Dark Souls game, especially the last in a trilogy. The final dislike that carries over is that I wish that, aside from the boss fights, they would have implemented more music into the game. I know I've said this in my discussions of Dark Souls Remastered and Scholar of the First Sin, but I feel like the lack of music in Dark Souls 3, as well as those previous two games, just makes the world of Dark Souls feel empty. Dark Souls as a world is big and epic, and I don't want it to feel empty. And that's why I feel like the more background music would add so much, and it doesn't make sense why they never did this. What it comes down to here is that I did still enjoy my time with Dark Souls 3 for all the reasons I already outlined. Of course, that translates to my time with this trilogy as a whole. I really did enjoy my experience with all three of the Dark Souls games. I love the dark fantasy atmosphere that the Dark Souls series portrays, as it's a type of dark fantasy that not many other games gives us. It's a world that is decaying. People are dying all the time, it seems like. And, I will say as a trilogy is that even with watching all the cutscenes in the games, I don't really understand what the overall story of the three games is when you play them. I had to go and watch a video that explains the lore and the story of these games before I got it, so I kind of feel like the storytelling across this trilogy could have used a little bit of work. But Dark Souls 3 is a good and enjoyable game. That's going to do it for this episode, so if you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.